Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, and welcome to our discussion on the Design Manager password system and user settings. My name is Brad and I'll be hosting a demonstration today. If you have questions during the webinar, feel free to enter them into the questions pane under GoToWebinar panel. If the question is outside of the scope of today's discussion, please email them to support@designmanager.com. And lastly, if you miss a portion of the webinar or want to review any of our past discussions or topics, go to our YouTube channel at Design Manager Inc., Design Manager INC. And here you can see any variety of our tutorials, project management accounting courses, and all of our weekly webinars as well. In this week's webinar, we'll be discussing granting and restricting access to various functionality in Design Manager using the password attribute system on the password or user account window, along with some additional configuration on the user settings window. As usual, I'll be using examples in both Design Manager Cloud and Design Manager Professional Cloud. And as some password attributes are only available in the Professional platform, I'll try to review both sets in detail, and I'll save some of the specialized professional attributes for the end. The password system in Design Manager is located on the Company Information window in both Design Manager Cloud and Design Manager Professional Cloud, which are accessed by clicking File, Company Settings, and then Users and Security on Design Manager Cloud, and in Professional, very similar, File, Company Information and Settings, Users and Security. Now, for all of our cloud users, you're going to see something very similar. You'll see an individual entry for each of the Design Manager Cloud accounts that you have purchased and are currently using. When a cloud user logs in to Design Manager Cloud, Design Manager will automatically apply all of the password settings and other user settings to that account upon logging in. Now, speaking of a Design Manager account, let's take a moment to discuss what happens when new users are added or you're just beginning to use Design Manager. Upon the user first logging into Design Manager Cloud, a user account entry is automatically created for them. The name, however, will be unconfigured, as we can see here for our VitaNova user 7. And notice I'm actually logged in under that particular account, and you can see where my name would be in the bottom of the application. It still says unconfigured as well. Ideally, the administrator would edit the user's account, and while doing so, they can change their name, address, and then properly configure their permissions. Further, for our Pro Cloud users, they're actually denied access to any and all functions in the program by default. This really ensures that the proper permissions are reviewed prior to the user gaining access to the program itself. Now, our Design Manager Cloud users are not prohibited from functionality. I can go to my project and specifications or documents in accounting or what have you. As smaller firms, more often than not, will grant all access to users. The user can, of course, then be configured or restricted as necessary by the administrator. And that leads us to the concept of the administrator account. There's always going to be one administrator account in Design Manager Cloud. And you can see, if we notice the password attribute tree, which we'll be discussing shortly in great detail, that's actually disabled. We're ensuring that the admin has access to all areas of the program. And further, you can see that both the disabled option and the copy from option are also disabled. And we'll discuss both of those briefly momentarily. Okay, I'm going to jump over to the professional platform here, and I am using a test account or test system for this demonstration, so it will appear just a wee bit different, but barely noticeable. And on our users and security, we can see all of our entries as we saw before: the user login or user account, the name. Our professional platform allows you to associate an employee code, which we'll see shortly, the last login time, and then disabled. And if we edit one of our entries, let's take a look at that information in greater detail. The user account name is generally going to be disabled, as we're seeing here. But here's where we can change the username. And again, as we make a brand new account, we'd want the admin to come through and put in the individual's name, as in Patrick Wolf in this example, but it doesn't have to be a proper name. It could be something more generic. Perhaps if users are sharing an account, this could be accounting or design intern, something along those lines. And this username is actually, let's call it, linked to various activity in Design Manager, particularly accounting transactions, which are displayed on windows such as the transaction search window or the transaction register report. So we can see who actually input various transactions or revise them, etc. Further, it's also linked to the documents that you can create through your address book, which we'll see momentarily. Same with the optional user title. I use Senior Designer for Patrick Wolf, but again, that could be Principal, Designer, Design Assistant, etc. And as I mentioned with the templates and the documents on the address book, we take a quick look at that. Let's imagine that I wanted to create a document for the Carters. I could simply select them. And I can make documents such as our elegant letter, as we see here. And I can see there's my Patrick Wolf and my senior designer titles coming up for me. So that information is used throughout the system, and we do recommend that you update it. Okay. As I said, in the professional platform, you can associate an employee within Design Manager with a particular account. And this is conveniently used when entering time billing through Design Manager and some other areas of the software. Then lastly, we have the concepts of being disabled. Well, if I disable an account in Design Manager Cloud, the user could still log in to the Design Manager Cloud web page, but they would not be able to launch the program. Let's imagine that the user went and changed their password, which they can through Design Manager login web page, but we could disable the account in case that the support team at Design Manager hasn't yet had time to, on our side, disable the account. You can do so they can log into the web page, but they can't run the program. An unusual situation, but it does occur. And lastly, and very conveniently, we have the copy from button. This allows us to take all of the password attributes that we're going to go over shortly from one account and inherit or copy them into a new one. And then we can make subtle changes if necessary, but it'll save us a great amount of time, and it'll ensure consistency and accuracy across various levels in the company. So if we want all of our senior designers to have the same access, or junior designers or design assistants, etc., it's very convenient to use one account sort of as a template for the other ones. Now, some of that information is, as we said, the username, title, etc., email address. The user might want to have access to themselves, but very frequently, the company information window, because inherently it has a lot of sensitive information such as account settings, configurations, those types of things that we might want to have restricted from the average user, but we still want to give the employee themselves the ability to change their title or their email address or those types of things. They can do so using a different window called the user settings window. And here you can see I've created one as an example with all of my information in there. So I can access my name, title, and email. If I change it here, it'll appear on the user account or password window. And vice versa, if I change it there, it'll appear here. So the information is linked between the two windows. I also have some control over the visual settings in Design Manager. Many of you don't know that you can change some aspects of how the program actually appears. You can set different themes, different colors, various appearances of the toolbars. Some people like to have, may think that the grid lines in some of our windows are too small or undefined. Well, you could set it to the Office 2010 version, and then areas like your project specifications these grid lines here between each of the columns will be much more defined. You can actually change your font size as well. We have the normal, and you can do large or largest. Now, be warned that if you do increase the font size, there are going to be some areas where a label may be cut off or text may be cut off, but that's just a constriction of the application itself. Our default email message. I put in something very generic, dear, and then an indicator that I'm going to want to input the individual's name, and then my name and my position as well. So whenever I'm sending emails through Design Manager, that'll be defaulted for me. And of course, I could add or append any text as I see fit. Under our workstation settings area, we have some other functions as well. How do I want to send my emails, like I just mentioned? I could use Design Manager Cloud servers to do so, and that'll handle all of the email traffic for me, not only sending it to the recipient, but sending me a copy as well. If I wanted to have all my emails appear as if they're coming from my Google account or my Apple account, I could input what we call our SMTP settings as well, and that'll make all of the emails appear as if they're being sent from your mail program. A few other options. Do you want to see the to-do list or appointment list when Design Manager begins? So in other words, do I want my tasks and appointments to come up automatically for me? I choose not to. I'll launch that if I need it. And I can even choose to see the image thumbnails. Again, back on our specifications, you can see all the images I've added as a column within our specification window. I could turn that off if I wanted to, perhaps even if I was in an area where my internet speed wasn't all that great, if I was on if I was using my cellular phone plan rather than my actual Wi-Fi, etc. You could turn those off and on at any time, and you do so from the user settings window. The synchronization of the Outlook, that only applies to users who not only have our Design Manager Cloud, but also have our optional Cloud Space package, whereby you would have a Cloud Space account, which grants you both personal and company cloud storage. It gives you the access to all of your Office programs, Excel, Outlook, etc., and along with a wide variety of other applications that we do offer as another package as well. Okay, user settings window. So you have some control over a lot of the overall aspects of how Design Manager functions, looks, and those types of things can be defined at the user setting window. And again, of course, that's on a per user basis. When I log in, this is my user settings window. I can't use the user setting window to change other people's accounts. I'd have to log in under their credentials. Okay. Let's get down to the real core of the password permission system, which is controlled by that attribute tree, which we just saw. Now, a quick word on permission theory. In general, it's always best to restrict access for users and then grant as necessary in order for the user to perform their duties. Doing so keeps all sensitive information secure from your junior employees, and it even prevents senior employees from inadvertently affecting information in an area where they may not be all that familiar. So it's just really safeguarding both sensitive information to keep things, financials, those types of things, up to the higher tier employees, principals, etc., and just prevent people from going into an aspect of the software and completely benignly, but yet accidentally deleting information or those types of things. Now, I've gone and created user accounts that are common standards, or common examples, at least for a design firm, with very different levels of permissions. So let's hop over to DM Cloud, and we can see I have the administrator, of course, myself, again, granted full access to get to anywhere. I have Patrick Wolf. Now, he's going to be a senior designer. He's going to have access to much of the program, but restricted from some folks, for some functions. For example, he may be able to not get into the company information. As I said, a lot of high-level information is stored there, but can access quite a degree of the projects and specifications, and can even access some of the documents and accounting areas. Conversely, I have an example for a design intern. Now, obviously, this would be very restricted access with only limited ability to get to various features in the software. And again, you would see much more tighter control throughout. So these are our two examples that we'll be using in the demonstration today. And now, notice, speaking of our password attributes, as you can see, they're arranged in a very logical tree structure, so you can quickly navigate to a particular function. And all of the relevant permissions are listed under each heading and subheading. In general, Design Manager Cloud follows basically the tools and to a degree the glossaries. So you can see we have our company information, then we have our project and specifications, employee time, documents and accounting, pay bills and checkbook, under checking, etc. So it kind of makes a similar flow through the program. In our professional platform, basically it's going to follow along the various tabs and then frames within the program. So under projects, we're going to have all of our access to our projects themselves, specifications, employee time, proposals. You can see how it follows very strictly right down the road there. And then under our accounting, we're going to have our accounts receivable, which is the AR, of course, accounts payable, which is the AP, etc. So as you're viewing the program, you have a very similar feel for where a particular password attribute would logically be stored. Now, to grant or restrict access, very easy. Let's take a look at our intern, for example. And under the vision pane, perhaps I don't want to have access to, I already restricted the accounting vision information, but maybe I don't want to see the design information either. To restrict, simply double click and you can see that the open lock becomes a red locked lock, for lack of a better term. So very easy how to open or close the lock. Just double click and it'll do so for you. Now you may have noticed many of the features have standard add, edit, and delete options, which, not surprisingly, allow the user to create new, update, or remove a particular entry respectively. So if we look under Patrick Wolf, go under our project and specifications, under projects, view access, all of these are open. Same with our items. So he's got not only access there, but he can add, edit, and delete as desired. Let's compare that to the intern. Now the intern, they can get into project and specifications as the view access is open. Same with the projects. But notice the add, edit, and delete are all locked, and the same with their ability to access items. We call this the situation where a user wants to be able to, where you want a user or an employee to be able to review information, but not make any conceivable changes. In the Design Manager terminology, we call this view-only mode. And if we see here, this is how it's configured. So let's take a look at the projects. So the intern is allowed to access the projects, but has add, edit, and delete, and other functions restricted. So if we go over to my Design Manager where I'm logged in as the design intern, they can get into the project window and specifications, great, but they can't create a new project. They can go to edit. Well, I thought that the edit function was locked. Well, it is. If I click OK, I'm blocked there. And obviously, I can't delete either. And the same with specifications. So I could allow the user to get down and access an item, but I can't create a new one. If I edit the item and I inadvertently enter a bunch of unwanted text, if I go to save, I'm blocked again. And of course, I could prevent from deleting as well. So I'm giving the intern the ability to view all of this information, just not make any conceivable changes to it. Now, let's compare that. If we look at something like our accounts under our glossaries, and notice I've locked the view access here entirely, whereby in the project specifications it's open. So if the intern then tries to go to glossaries accounts, not allowed to get there whatsoever. So the view access prevents any ability to bring up or launch that particular function, while configuring the view only mode allows them to get there but not make any changes. Okay, view only access, very, very common request that we have in our technical support, and that's how you can configure it. Now let's get to the most interesting portion of the discussion today. What do all these various attributes do? Now, I might not be able to get through all of them, but I'm going to give it a shot. So back to our admin application. I've got my user account window open for my temp, and we're going to go right down, and I'll go back and forth between the two programs and the two platforms and show how the user, the intern, is prevented from accessing area, and I'll describe how the various attributes function, at least in overall terms. So as I said before, company information, very common, highly restricted information in there, account settings, global settings for projects, those types of things. So you do generally want to restrict that to more senior members. And obviously, if I log in as the intern, I'm not going to be able to get there whatsoever. But underneath our view access, not only could I allow them functions, I could prevent them from, they could view the company window but not change it with the edit. The advanced options and update projects are also available. So as the admin, those types of things would be the update projects, and advanced, I could selectively restrict those as well. The vision area, where you can selectively grant access to the vision panel. So we can see over on the intern, I have both the accounting area and the design turned off, so I can't aspect that of the vision. So they can simply get to their calendar and to their timer to record any time that they may be using. Also, under the company information, if the user is granted access there at all, it's very common to lock the passwords themselves as well. So that's an entirely separate attribute that you can control. And if we go along, we go to our project and specifications, sort of the heart of the project management area. As we saw already, the intern has the ability to access project and specifications, but we saw we can access the window, but we can't add projects, edit, or delete them, nor can we get to any of the advanced areas. So even if they can edit the project, they wouldn't be able to access update items or advanced markup. As we can see on the intern, we can get there, can edit the project, but those advanced features like update items and all the advanced areas are locked as well. So again, locking things down to give the individual the ability to access information, just not make any changes. Access to closed projects and reopening a closed project. So we can see on our admin account, I can get underneath my closed projects if desired, but if the intern tries to go there, they're blocked as well. And further, if they were granted access to the closed projects at all, I could selectively say if they can open, if they're allowed to reopen a closed project. Location level projects has its own series of attributes. And again, I have them set for locking down any of those. So the intern could not come in and make a new location. They certainly couldn't come and delete a location or even edit an existing one. I'm blocked there as well. Now those are project level locations. Company-wide locations we'll see a little bit later in the discussion. And the same with items. We saw we have granted view-only access to both the items and the components themselves. Next, documents and accounting. So you're getting into more sensitive areas here. You're talking about the ability to create proposals, purchase orders, record cash receipts, and those types of things. So the intern can get into that window, but now we're getting much more restrictive. First, they can't even access the other views in Design Manager Cloud for vendor and journal entries. So if they came to documents and accounting, even if they click on those options, they can't get there, and they're not even visible as tabs along the documents and accounting window itself. We've already turned off sensitive information such as the transaction search. Transaction search is a powerful tool that allows you to review any fiscal transactions in the system based upon parameters that you provide, and the returns and credits window. So we can see I can't get to the transaction search, nor can I get to the high-level returns and credits whereby I can process returns to my clients and from my vendors. So of course that would make sense to lock that functionality down. Under documents and accounting, we start seeing our different documents we can create: proposals, purchase orders, and client invoices. So for proposals, we can access them, but I can't add, edit, or delete. I can conveniently reprint though. If I need the intern to send off or email or reprint a proposal, that's perfectly fine. So in that scenario, I go down to the Carters, I can't make a proposal. I can't even right click and do new proposal. For my existing proposals, I could edit, but again, I'm blocked upon hitting OK. And obviously, deleting will be out of the question, but I can certainly allow them to reprint. So you can see, and I'll say this several times throughout the discussion today, how really in-depth and robust this password system is. You really have quite a degree of flexibility in the functionality you want to give to all of your various employees. The purchase orders are configured similarly, so we can't add, edit, or delete, but we could reprint. And again, can't add, we could edit, but are blocked. Same with deleting, but we could reprint. Now, along with purchase orders goes hand in hand our order tracking information. So that has a separate set of attributes. Can they access the purchase order status window? And if so, can they make any changes? So I allow the intern to access the status window, but if they try to make any information, they cannot save and are forced to cancel, thereby negating any changes they made. So that view-only access comes into play here as well. And we can see that our client invoices are also configured similarly, cannot create, make changes, or edit an existing and delete, but they can reprint. Now, obviously for a design intern, we're not going to grant any functionality to fiscal information such as cash receipts and purchases. So let's jump over to our Patrick Wolf user and see how we've configured those areas. Jumping over to Patrick's, going to our documents in accounting, and again, we can see already that there's a more functionality granted. And under cash receipts, we can see that we can access them, but can't delete or do some other functionality. So under Patrick's account, he can go under documents in accounting. He could create a new cash receipt for any of his projects. He can even edit an existing deposit if desired. But the ability to void or delete is prevented, so we can't delete that deposit. The run credit card transaction attribute. Now, if you have a merchant service account with Cayenne, our partnered credit card processor, This determines whether the user can process a receipt through Cayenne's merchantware gateway. So if I want to allow Patrick to go ahead and do so and quote unquote run the credit card for the clients, that attribute restricts or grants that functionality. Similarly, under purchases, Patrick can both add and edit purchases, but can't delete them. So how does that functionality behave? So let's go under our purchase orders. So we could create a vendor deposit or read a vendor invoice. I could even go and create an operating expense if desired. I can even edit existing ones. So if we go under, let's say, FedEx, I could edit my operating expense, but I've prevented him from voiding them. So again, myriad of layers of functionality can be granted. Next, checking. If we see under our checking, this almost matches the checking window identically. So we have paid bills and print checks, make bank deposit, checkbook, etc. So each of the various, let's call them tabs, could be individually granted or restricted access. And in Patrick's case, we can't access the make bank deposit, can't access the reconcile cash, nor can we access the reconcile credit card. So under his account, if we go to our pay bills and checkbook, we can see can't access make bank deposit, can't access the reconcile cash, nor the reconcile credit card. Completely prevented from even clicking on those tabs. But the areas that he can access, he's even has some restricted functions here. So in the pay bills, print checks tab, he can get there. He can even print checks, but he can't use the hand check, offset, or edit amount areas. So if he tried to edit the amount, he's blocked. Same with hand checks. If I didn't want him just grabbing a check and writing one, nor can he use the offset function. Again, those are all somewhat higher degree accounting functions, and it makes sense to prevent that, except for the accounting professionals themselves. On the checkbook, we can get there. I can even print out a copy of the register if I wanted to, but things like voiding a check or using the transfer between two cash accounts are blocked, as we can see with the voiding and the transfer being locked and the print being left open. Credit cards, same thing. I can access and print. So we could get over to the credit card activity. I could print out a register. I could even use the Go To feature, which conveniently jumps me right over to documents and accounting, provided the fact that I am allowed to get to the vendor view. I can do so. Now, since there is a slight in the difference of how these windows are accessed in the checking on the Pro platform, let me just go through that here as well. So if we look at our professional platform under accounts payable, checking, view access, it looks very similar. And we can see how Patrick is prevented or granted access to those areas. So I configure it the exact same way. The windows are just slightly different. So under the view access of the pay print, Patrick can get there, and he's denied the various functions we saw before. Same with checkbook, reconcile he's prevented from, transfer. Similarly with our credit cards, can't get to the reconciliation area, but I could use the other functions like the Go To or the print options. So those windows are slightly different in the professional platform. So I wanted to show how the exact same functions work between the two platforms. Okay. Employee time. Let's go back to our intern for that, who's got a lot more restrictions in that area. So the intern can get into the employee time, can input information, but can't edit, delete, or use the import function. So I may hand my design intern all of my billable time that I want them to input, but if they need to make any changes or try to delete them, I want them to alert me myself to do so. So if we go back to the intern, I can access employee time. If I'm working for Patrick, for example, I can add, but I certainly couldn't delete, nor can I make any edits as well. Also, I've blocked down the import, where Design Manager with our new time import system allows you to bring in time entries from a variety of sources. If a CSV file or an Excel file, you can bring those in, and that's something else I've locked down as well. Glossaries. Generally, it's the ability to access the glossaries listed off of the menu. And as we saw before, accounts I have blocked down where we can't, where the intern can't access them whatsoever. And along with other information like the employees, there could be sensitive information in there with rate and cost of the employees, those types of things. Under employees, even if I granted access there, you can selectively allow users to get to the employees, particularly their own information, but you might not want them to see time exceptions, where they would go in and actually see each other's rates and costs, or the payroll tab, where you may have salary information in. So all of that can be configured independently. The locations here, these are the company-wide locations. So I may want one user or one employee at the company who maintains our standard list of company locations rather than the project locations we saw before. And you can see, since the intern has that locked, they can't access the location window for company-wide at all. The address book. They can access it, but can they create miscellaneous contacts? Now the address book's interesting. Let's bring that up under the intern account. Oops. Whatever functions we have configured for each of the various entities, like vendors or clients or what have you, that's going to follow into the address book. So if I can't make or edit a vendor as the intern from the vendor window, I can't do so from the address book either. And if I wanted to make a miscellaneous contact, if I can't make a client, I can't make one here. And moreover, if I wanted to use the more general, truly miscellaneous contact for restaurants or those types of things that may not be true vendors or what have you, since I had that blocked from the intern, they can't do that either. So the address book not only has its own set of password attributes to restrict access, but also follows logically all of the other glossaries you've already pre-configured. So you can't sort of get around the password system. To-do list. Well, I want the intern to be able to get to their to-do list. I want them to create, edit, and delete their own tasks, but I've locked down a few things for them. They can't view tasks or appointments of others. So they can get to their task lists, but notice the show for is stuck to me. I'm just going to view their own tasks. They can't create tasks or appointments for others. So if they made a new appointment, notice the this is for is again locked to me. And lastly, the ability to edit tasks, appointments of others. Well, if I can't view them, I certainly can't edit them either. Now, Conversely, with Wolf, we jump over to his account, he can view tasks and appointments of others. So under Patrick's account, he's seeing his list, but if he wants to see the intern, he can do so. Yet, he can't create or edit tasks of others. So if he wanted to change the intern's appointment, he cannot. Again, nice sophisticated levels that you can grant and restrict access throughout the software. The import ability, whether or not the individual can access the import to bring in a file for new vendors or clients or those types of things, that's locked down for the intern, of course. So off of the file, the import is denied. Client Connect, same. If you use the Design Manager Client Connect portal, where you can grant your clients the ability to access a custom website where they can see their proposals, invoices, and those types of things. Obviously, there's a lot of configuration in there, so the intern would also be blocked at that level. And lastly, reports. Now let's go to the intern real quick. For the intern, I've shut all of the reports down. So if they try to get there at all, they're not going to be able to access or run any of the reports. Oops, that's Patrick's. Intern. Reports, they can't get there at all, as we can see for the intern account. Now, for Patrick's account, however, I want him to certainly be able to access information, particularly project management information in the reporting area, but you can selectively grant entire types of reports. I don't want Patrick seeing any of the general ledger reports, but I want him to be able to see some accounts receivable reports, perhaps just not the sales tax report. So under his account, he can access the report window as we just saw, but notice there's not a general ledger option or a folder whatsoever. And under accounts receivable, he doesn't even see the sales tax report. So not only can they not access them, they're not even tempted to try to run them because they don't appear on their report window whatsoever. Okay, now that's a pretty in-depth walkthrough for most of the attributes within our Design Manager Cloud. Now, I'd like to focus on some of our password features that are only available for our Pro Cloud users. And I've configured Patrick's Pro Cloud account just to show how the features are disabled, and I'll describe how they work as well. I'm going to close a few windows down here just so I can navigate a little bit more smoothly. Okay, back on our admin account, I have Patrick's information loaded. Okay, there we go. And then I also have Patrick's account loaded up, as we can see. So let's walk down and talk about some of the many password attributes only for our Pro Cloud users. So as we saw under our file, company information, I have him locked down for view access, but we had not only update projects, but of course we have update inventory in the Pro platform as well, which is located on the company information window, inventory, update inventory. So since there's no inventory in Design Manager Cloud, that's only a Pro feature. Okay. Not only can we have the ability to import files or CSVs or XLS files to get in inventory or to bring in clients or vendors, the professional platform also has the ability to import a CIF file, which can create items and components in your specifications directly from a file created in a specifying program, such as CAP or Giza, and I have that turned off for Patrick, so he would not be able to go to File, Import, and import CIF. Under Project, a few additional areas. Under Projects, there is the Status window, a very handy window in the professional platform where you have a lot of consolidated financial information for a particular project, which we can see is accessed from the project window itself with the status button, and I have that turned off. I may not want some financial information easily available to my design team. Also, budgets. I may give Patrick view access, view only ability to view a budget on a project. So he may be able to get into the Carters, get to the budget tab. He can see the 2 budget entries that I've created, but I don't want him adding any, deleting any, or editing, etc. So the budgeting system in a Design Manager Professional can also obviously be password protective, as you may assume. Specifications. Let's jump over to our specifications window. We saw add, edit, and delete. Change, bypass, work in process. As many of you know, how Design Manager on accrual basis will take the cost of merchandise or services and put it into your work in process asset account until you then invoice the client, whereby it goes into cost of goods. We don't want people who don't understand that concept inadvertently bypassing that process. So you can lock down the change, bypass, work in process password attribute. So while on my admin account, I can edit an item, and on my status, I see my bypass work in process option. Under Patrick's, it's not even visible. So there's no way for him to even attempt to access that ability. Allow locked status change. Now, if one of your status codes is set for password protect, it means that the user can't change it unless they have the allow locked status change unlocked. And as we see under Patrick, he does not have that ability. So if he attempted to go under or edit any of the locked areas, he can't make those changes. So there's no way for him to change, to manually change a status of a locked item status without that ability. Now he could come and change the master bedroom window treatment to ordered, but he can't change the completed to anything else because of those combination of settings. And some others, the quick add, transfer, create item, and edit item. The quick add, as many of you know, allows you to rapidly create framework specifications in a particular project. That's blocked. The transfer, that function allows you to any item that you've recorded your vendor invoice for that the client for whatever reason refuses or returns, you may want to transfer that merchandise into inventory or even directly to another project, which there is accounting activity associated with that functionality. You may want to lock that down, which we have done. The ability to add tasks. If I wanted to add a task for our fabric, that's locked as well. The schedule, as many of you know, Design Manager has a schedule tab, which allows you to put in a various degree of phases and the dates that are applicable to those phases, which as Patrick's is disabled or locked, he can't get to that tab. As you can see that it's grayed out. Show costs, interesting one. For those of you who are using discount pricing, what you can do in that case, if we edit our California King bed here, notice since I am in discount mode, I don't even see the cost whatsoever. All I see is the price. So I'm preventing my staff from seeing what I'm purchasing the service or merchandise for. We don't even see it on a column for estimated cost on the item window, nor do we see the estimated cost on the item tab, and the pricing tab is also disabled. So you're really preventing various employees from seeing what the firm is being charged for any of the goods and services. Mark complete inactive warning. If this is locked, whenever an individual goes to mark an item as complete with the complete selection along the far right, they're going to get a warning. If that's unlocked, the warning would not occur and the user would simply be allowed to mark it as complete. Generally, it's better to have them warned so they're acknowledging the fact that they're doing something in case they inadvertently select that completed or inactive checkbox. Allow locked edits. That's another password attribute that is tied to the item status codes in Design Manager. For example, the inactive status is set for locked edits. And that says when the status becomes set, the item component cannot be edited unless the user has the allow locked edits password attribute unlocked, which Patrick does not. So if he attempts to edit let's say our arrowroot fabric is marked as inactive, he can access the window, but again, is blocked from making any changes. Access denied, the current item status does not allow editing. So he can go in here and make any changes that he may want to, but such changes are not going to be able to be saved and you're forced to cancel. So that very sophisticated item status code system becomes even more sophisticated if you pair it with the password attributes as well. Okay. Moving down the list, employee time. Few options here as well. Show rate and cost. What this does is it prevents the user from seeing the cost of the employee and the rate we're charging the client when they're entering in their time. So for Patrick, if he goes to his employee time, let's see, notice how my employee was automatically input for me because I have it configured into my user account, making my life a little bit faster when I'm entering in my employee time. If we click add here, all I see is my hours. No ability to see rate or time in the lower portion of the window. And I don't even see columns as such on the employee time window itself. So my user really has no idea how much I am charging my clients for their services, nor how much he or others are being paid by the company if I have my cost information put in. Show all employee time. Now, under that password attribute, if that's open and I click all entries and I put in, oh, I don't know, perhaps close to the whole year, I would see not only Patrick's information, but I would see Ashley Brandon's, etc., all of them. But since Patrick has that locked, he's only going to be seeing his time for that frame when I'm using the all entries. Now that must, with that particular password attribute, you do need to have the employee code associated on the window for it to work properly. And the import feature is disabled as well, as we saw before. Proposals, very similar for the most part for our Design Manager Cloud, except for the ability to view the status and the allow status change. So on the proposal window, Patrick Patrick is prevented from using the status window. And even if he could get there, we have the allow status change locked. So conversely, with my admin account, I can access the status. The allow status change option would prevent me from being able to change the item status along the top of that window, which allows you to change the status for all the items on a proposal simultaneously. Purchase orders. Really the only change here is the batch email faxing area, where if you don't want your individuals to be able to get to the batch email and faxing tab, that would prevent them. And that's a very handy system that allows you to configure a vendor for always receiving POs via fax or email, and they accumulate on the email and faxing tab. And you can either manually have them all transmitted or even schedule a time to do so. Other features? Well, delivery tickets, a feature unique to the Pro Cloud platform, where you create sort of shipping tickets where your delivery team knows what particular merchandise is being delivered to a particular site. And I have that broken down to view-only access for Patrick. So he can get to the delivery ticket window, but can't add, edit, or delete. He could simply view them or reprint them, or not even reprint in this case. And then the specification search as well. Generally, you would want your designs, particularly your senior designers, to be able to get to that window, but there is a lot of cost and price information there. So on your specifications, you might want to have that locked for junior members. Okay. Under our accounts receivable, accounts payable, and general ledger, you can really individually grant or restrict access to both the new and existing tabs of your fiscal windows. So like under your client invoices window, you can see you have a new and existing tab, and you really can restrict access to both or either of the tabs and even functions within them individually. So for Patrick, he can get to the accounts receivable, can get to client invoices, can even get to the new tab, but he can't make finance charges. So he can get to the accounting, can get to the accounts receivable client invoices. He can even create an invoice, but he can't access the finance charge window, which again would make sense if you're narrowing that down just to senior accounting people. And then on his existing tab, he can get there. He can reprint an invoice, which certainly makes sense, but can't make any adjustments, credits, or updates. So I could certainly reprint an invoice, but I'd be prevented from making an invoice adjustment, crediting or reversing the invoice, or using the update function, which allows you to update the item descriptions on the invoice, the layout or the arrangement of items on the invoice, the transaction description or marks, etc. Generally, that might be allowed for someone like Patrick to be able to do. Point of sale. Can Patrick access the point of sale? And if so, a variety of features here as well. So under our accounting point of sale, Patrick's allowed to log in, but he can't change the register number or manually execute the cash drawer, which is prevented by the allow register number or cash drawer open function. The forced login. If this is locked, as soon as Patrick logged in, he would go right to the point of sale login window. So if you have an individual who just does point of sale transactions in your showroom, that's a handy feature. View walk-in history or client history. So upon logging in, let's choose one of our accounts here. That determines whether or not we can use the history button right along the side of the items grid. All of those are just for the point of sale function. Log out. That brings us to accounts payable. Again, similarly, can you access accounts payable? If you can get to the vendor invoice window, can you get to the new and existing tabs, and what functions are available for you there? So under new, I may allow Patrick to enter in bills, but perhaps I'll prevent him from accessing the recurring operating expenses. So as you can see, I can get to my bills and invoices. I can even add, certainly let Patrick enter in bills if he desires, but I may want to have the recurring operating expenses locked down. Recurring operating expenses are very handy for bills that happen monthly or in a timely manner. Rent, mortgage, those types of things. I may have sensitive information in there, perhaps all the principals take an owner's draw every month that we write checks for, so you may not want an individual being able to access that information. And on the existing tab, he can certainly get there, but we can't make any edits or voids. All the checking information, we already went through that when I was comparing between the Design Manager Cloud, so we can move right through there and get to our general ledger information, which predominantly is journal entries, accounts, and those types of things. There are two important settings on a per user basis. Allow fiscal month changes. Now notice Patrick, if he goes to our cash receipts, for example, I can't change the fiscal month tab, fiscal month menu whatsoever. So whatever the current fiscal month is, as defined by the company, that's what Patrick will be posting into. Now, however, with that being said, let's say Patrick made a few invoices at the end of October. Weekend became November. This may be stuck at October because he has transactions waiting to be posted into that month. The allow closed month postings would alert him, would automatically detect the fact that this month is now moved, it's now been closed, and it'll automatically change the fiscal month, even though Patrick can't do so himself. So those two options go hand in hand. Under the accounts, the ability to access them as we saw before, but in the professional, you can selectively say whether or not you can view the balances, which would be this function right there. Journal entries, generally no need for anyone in the design team to access these journal entries, but further, you can see again the new and existing. And much like with operating expenses, you have recurring journal entries as well. And you may not want Patrick to be able to access those. Recurring journal entries very commonly for payroll. You may want to have a very simple journal entry to reflect the effect on your cash, your salaries, taxes for the company, etc. And obviously that could be somewhat sensitive. You may want to have that locked down. Returns and credits. In Design Manager Professional, the returns and credits is not one window like it is in the DM Cloud. It's two separate, one for clients and one for vendors. And we can see Patrick can get to the client, but not the vendor. So he could access under accounts receivable, the client returns and credits, but yet be prevented from accessing under accounts payable, the vendor returns and credits. Two separate windows, each with their own unique password settings. Transaction search window we discussed already. Very sensitive information can be accessed there. So that's locked down as well. Inventory, obviously Pro Cloud has inventory while DM Cloud does not. So Patrick has view only ability as when it comes to inventory. He can view it, he can look at it, but not add any or make any changes. So he can certainly access the stock item inventory, can even bring up one of the items to get more information, but in case he makes a mistake here and starts charging outrageous amounts, that's all going to be prevented. Can't add, can't use the duplicate function, and certainly not be able to delete. View only access for the inventory glossary. Inventory also has the ability to make purchase orders. And Patrick has basically reprint only ability there. So he could reprint purchase order for inventory, but can't add, delete, etc. And finally, under glossaries, just a few differences here. The address book, you can selectively grant or restrict particular functions, such as I may not want him to export the client list for whatever reason. So under the address book, you can't use the export feature, but you could use the Word doc feature, those types of things as we saw before. And also under vendors, just like we saw with projects who have status, vendors have status in a status window available in the professional platform. So the vendor status window, much like the project status window, has a wide variety of summated and detailed fiscal information about that vendor, and you may want to keep that somewhat restricted. And the reports function exact same as we saw in Design Manager Cloud. And with that, that brings us to our end of our lengthy discussion of the password attribute system in Design Manager, along with the user settings window. I tried to discuss some best practices when it comes to granting permissions in general, and I really tried to explore the password attributes available in both platforms in as much detail as I could within our time limit. I try to pay particular attention to some of the less known features that can enhance your overall control of what aspects of the program are available to your Design Manager users and your company, particularly view access and those types of features. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for joining the discussion today, and I hope you attend another one of our free webinars in the near future. Take care. Have a great day.